Hello and welcome to the patch notes for Europa Universalis IV 1.10. Now we're going to go through all the patch notes and discuss them in preparation for my EU4 campaign, which should start on the 26th when the DLC comes out. So let's start with the new expansion features. They have added a religious reform system for the new Nautili, Inti and Maya regions. Each of these religions will have 5 reforms that can pass by achieving certain conditions. Upon passing all 5 reforms and bordering a Western country, they can reform their religion, which jumps them up onto par with that Western country in technology and disables the special religion mechanics such as Doom and Authority. The reform bonuses are kept permanently even after reforming. So this sounds very similar to CK2 in terms of how it's going to work. My only issue would be is if it comes too easy for the AI to do it, but hopefully they've made it relatively difficult. Sounds a good way to make playing one of these religions a bit more interesting. So, added Maya psychomechanics. Mayan countries can now expand very rapidly to pass reforms, but upon passing a reform will collapse into a smaller state. Each reform passed allows them to terrain more territory on retain? Is that what we're going for? Retain more territory on collapse. Yes, Paradox patch notes, by the way, always have these kind of interesting grammar things in them, or just wrong words. Added Inti authority mechanics. Inti countries will have a ticking authority based on their size and can use this value to pass religious reforms. Each reform they pass will spark a civil war, which if they lose, revokes 2 reforms. Okay. So, yeah, it looks like they've got good ways for the AI will probably pretty much always fall in the civil war, would be my guess. So, yeah, sounds interesting. I wonder if the ticking authority based on your size, so that means you have to be larger, I would assume, to get more ticking. That seems interesting. Added Nautel Doom mechanics. Non-subject countries with the Nauteli... Is it Natuli? Natul? Okay. Religion will have Doom value that ticks towards 100 based on their size. If it ever hits 100, they lose all monarch points. The ruler and heir dies, all subjects break free, and they lose a religious reform, and a 000 ruler takes over. Each reform passed makes Doom go up slower. So this is a huge negative if you don't keep track of this. Because losing all your monarch points, that's because they're South American country, I think it's 1,300 and something. Monarch points is max. The ruler and heir dies, so you have no legitimacy. All subjects break free, no vassals. You go back in your reforms, and you don't get any monarch points. This is basically, if this happens, you might as well just restart the game. So, it sounds like a very risk-reward kind of mechanic here. Possibly. Assuming there's some kind of bonus for having a high Doom value, opposed to just, I don't know how you would lower that without it doesn't say. Added events for Maya, Inti and Nautel religions. Yep. It seems pretty easy to understand. Now possible to create an entirely custom nation by clicking the custom nation button during a game setup. You can set your custom nation starting location, provinces, culture, religion, government, ruling dynasty, national ideas and more. Up to 32 custom nations are supported in single and multiplayer. This is pretty cool because they have a thing somewhere in here. Is it? Nope, can't see it. We'll find it. It's you can randomize the whole map, as in where everybody is. So if you want to create your own nation, randomize the map, you can have a very, very different setup than you would usually have. Gives it a bit more replayability. Not that it doesn't have enough already. So, added options for custom setup where you can randomize a flattened province, base tax and manpower, play in an uncolonized world with only custom nations, or play in a world populated by randomly generated countries. Oh, there it is. Yep. That's a cool feature of the patch. Colonial nations will now accumulate the gold that they get from their mines, no longer benefit from it themselves, but instead sending a treasure fleet home to their treasure fleet to the homeland whenever enough gold has been accumulated. Non-friendly privateers in the trade node path will steal parts of it depending on privateer power. Now this is cool because it gives privateers a purpose, because the privateers will actually be able to go and steal the gold from the treasure fleets. And theoretically, you'll get more money from your colonial nations. That'd be my guess. Larger colonial nations, 10 provinces or more, now provide a merchant. That's really, really good. If you can get 2 or 3 large ones in America, that's now 3 merchants, you can get a lot of money off trade from those. Also, I think, although I might be wrong, that merchants increase Navy force limit somehow. Remember hearing that. Could be wrong. Fleets with big... Let's just alter these notes a little bit. Fleets with big and light ships can now be sent hunting pirates in trade nodes, reducing the privateer efficiency with up to 99% on gun, depending on gun ratio in the trade node. Okay. So this might be something useful if you've got heavies but you're not actually using them. You could send them to go and reduce privateer efficiency while also sending your other fleet to increase your own trade power in a node, thereby giving yourself a lot more money that way. It sounds more of a multiplayer thing, unless they made the AI more privateer friendly, because I don't think I've ever seen the AI use privateers. I'm sure they can, but never seen that happen. The Treaty of Tordesillas. The first Catholic nation to form a colonial nation in a colonial region will now get a bonus to colonization there, while other Catholic nations get penalties for colonizing it. Okay, so it's good to be first in the colonizing game. Can now set a conquistador in a colonial region to hunt for the 7 cities. This will make them automatically explore the surroundings and search for the legendary 7 cities of gold. Presumably you can also find them. You can order a fleet with an explorer to circumnavigate the globe. If Diplotech is at least 9, this will have it attempt a journey from the Straits of Magellan to the Cape of Good Hope. If it successfully makes the journey, and you are the first to circumnavigate the globe, you get 100 prestige. Okay. You can order fleets with explorers to automatically explore uncharted territories and coasts. You now get access to privateers if you own El Dorado, even if you do not own Wealth of Nations. That's nice, I suppose. And you get access to support independence if you own El Dorado and you do not own Conquest of Paradise. They're nice changes, but yeah, shouldn't be too big. Most people who are buying El Dorado, I would assume, would also have one of the others. Anyway. Free features. Multiplayer. Faster save game transfers. Don't play a lot of multiplayer, so wouldn't know. Added lots of dynamic historical events for South and Central American countries. Good. Gives it more reason to play them. Added the religions. Well, they did that for the main patch as well. Autosaves and multiplayer now have a multiplayer prefix. Okay. The Drac feud for Sweden is now disaster instead of an event chain. Okay. Not played as Sweden, but might need to do that. Added a new disaster for the Ottomans called the Janissary Decadence, which replaces some old parts of an event chain for Janissaries. Enjoy a disaster without unrest. Okay, so they're basically transitioning a lot of their old event chains into the new disaster system that they had last patch. Okay. All subjects now have liberty desire towards their overlord based on factors such as relative strength, war exhaustion, and tariffs. Their attitude towards overlord is determined by their level of liberty desire, with subjects at greater than 50 liberty desire refusing to pay taxes and contribute to wars, while subjects at 100 liberty desire are likely to declare an independence war. Now this is pretty huge because I believe this also includes vassals and all the other things that you can have. Protectorates, I guess, as well. Although maybe they don't have liberty desire. But yeah, that is that's big change. Because there used to be a lot of vassal feeding where you'd start off as a small nation, you get another nation, you'd feed all the nations around you to your vassal, and then you just diplo-annex your vassal and it would all be fine. But you can't necessarily do that. If you're weaker than your vassals, they're going to want to just leave. So, and they won't contribute towards your wars and taxes, which means that there's no point in having them. So it might mean that there's a little bit more emphasis on taking land yourself, which might make things a little different. Added dynamic tricolours for revolutionary countries. Okay, so revolutionary countries are easier to notice. Major rework of terrain map to better reflect reality. Iberia is no longer all desert. How our province appears on the map should now be much closer matched to its actual terrain. Okay, so this is good. So it's going to be a little bit different on where terrain is placed. So, might give you a bit more options in wars. Opposed to all being desert in Iberia, you might have hills somewhere or some plains, and it helps with min-maxing where your wars are happening. Added 4 new terrain types: drylands, steppe, highlands, and farmlands. Good. Don't know what they do, so. And 10 new achievements. Okay, so that's all of the features from the patch. Now it's just gameplay balance. So, game balance. Autonomy and cores. Your own claims on your own provinces no longer expires. Wait, your own claims on your own provinces no longer expires until you have cored the province. Okay. So what this is saying is, what used to happen is if you had taken a province that you had a claim on, and then you didn't core it instantly, you could lose the claim, which would then mean that your coring cost would increase. But now, as long as you have the province, it won't expire until you've cored the province. So basically it means that you can keep a province uncored for longer. So this can help if you don't have a lot of admin points saved up, or if you just want to take a lot of land at once, but don't necessarily want to core all at once. So that'd be useful. Centralization and decentralization modifiers from events now affect autonomy instead of income. Yep, that sounds about right. Sounds like that's just a change because they didn't have autonomy to start with. And it wouldn't necessarily make sense for it to affect revolt risk, but autonomy it would make sense for it to affect, so. Conquering primitives no longer grants nationalism for non-primitives. Okay, so if you're, say, a Western nation and you go and conquer a tribe, presumably that means you're no longer going to have nationalism in the tribe? Maybe? Oh no, depends what it means by primitives. Maybe it just means anyone who is significantly weaker than you, like in terms of tech. Okay. Colonized provinces no longer contribute to overextension even after they finish. Okay, so this is a change because you had to core provinces that you colonized in the same, like if you were on the same continent, but that would then give you overextension. So now what's happening is it won't count towards overextension. You'll still have to core it, but it won't count towards overextension. And non-core provinces no longer contribute force limits. This means that you will no longer be able to just conquer lots of land, get a large army from that, then go and conquer more land for that army. You have to core it first. Presumably there was some kind of exploit going on there. I hadn't heard of it though. Capital. Players are no longer blocked from changing capital due to having a fixed capital. So this, I think it's Tunis and some other nations had that you just couldn't change your capital. So it's good that they added that in because the players shouldn't be blocked from doing that. One of the ways to end religious turmoil now requires full humanist idea group, not just picking it and discarding it immediately. Okay, so religious turmoil must be a disaster, and you could get rid of it by just taking you just take humanist, discard humanist, and it just went away. So another exploit. Colonial nations. Provinces within 2 provinces of a colonial nation's colonial region can now be sold to that colonial nation. Okay, so this is quite interesting because it means that you can make a larger colonial nation than you could normally make. But you still can't make it infinitely large, but you can make it just a little bit larger than it is. So that's kind of good. Diplomacy. Breaking a royal marriage with a rival is no longer a stability hit. Okay, so this means that if the AI, say, rivals you, and you rival them back, you're not stuck in a royal marriage forever. Like, you can't attack each other because you lose stability and you get war exhaustion for attacking each other. But you don't want to get rid of the royal marriage because you take the stability hit. Now you'll just take, presumably you still take the 1 prestige hit or some. I think it's 1 prestige. So there's that. Exploration. Reduced prestige gained on province discoveries. So you used to get, I think it was 5 prestige per province you discovered. So if you sent out your conquistador, it went round, you could get easily up to 100 prestige that way. So they probably lowered it something like 1 or something like that. HRE can now join a league even if you have a truce with the Emperor. Okay, I don't really use the leagues, but I'm sure it's good for people who did. Ideas. Aristocracy. Noble officers are no longer +1 shock. I'm going to say that this UT is and are instead -1 army tradition decay and -1 navy tradition decay. So this is a nerf to aristocracy because +1 shock for an army leader is pretty good, especially early game. So, yeah, it was a little bit strong. Economic. Centralization is no longer +1 advisor pool, but instead -0.05 monthly autonomy. Now, I'm not sure if this is a buff or a nerf or something, but it's definitely an interesting change because lowering monthly autonomy means that if you get a lot of these stacked up, you can raise autonomy when you first get a province, and it'll lower very quickly, and then you'll get a good province quicker. So, without having any unrest. So I think it's probably a buff, but +1 advisor pool is really good if you want to get a certain advisor. So it's just a difference of how you use it. Reduce mercenary cost reductions for some national ideas. So that was when you got, I think it's -33% mercenary cost. So presumably if you got a lot of those ideas, they'd add up and you could have very, very cheap mercenaries. Reduce the reduction in cost of reducing war exhaustion for some national ideas. So again, just making that a bit weaker. Finisher for offensive is now +2.5% army morale recovery. I think that might used to be in forced march. I can't remember though. And if it did used to be forced march, then that's a large nerf. But if it wasn't, then I don't know. Oh, it's having a bit of trouble with the scroll wheel there. Leaders. Conquistadors and explorers now have slightly fewer pips on average than generals and admirals. So this gives you a reason to roll a general over a conquistador, because previously once you unlocked conquistadors, what you do is you'd just roll conquistadors, because what would happen is they could explore everywhere and would have the exact same chance of getting good stats as generals. Now generals have a better chance at getting good stats. That's good. Religion will now get Occupation of Rome penalty if you're a Catholic and a subject of yours who is not. The Papal States holds Rome. I thought that was already true. Maybe... yeah. Maybe it used to be you could have the Papal State under you and they would be able to control Rome. And then you would get the negative penalty because you had the occupation of Rome, even though the Papal State still controlled it. So that's probably what that changes. Will now get a penalty to diplomatic reputation if you're a Catholic, have subjugated the Pope and have not formed Italy. Okay. And Italy no longer gets a penalty while holding Rome. So it's giving you a good reason to turn into Italy, because then you get to you get rid of the negative penalty for holding Rome. So it's just an incentive to form Italy more often. Revolts. Innovative lost knowledge transfer. Innovative gained dynamic court. +1 advisor pool. So that's ideas, I think. I can't remember what knowledge transfer is. I think that's tech cost. So negative 10% tech cost or idea cost. And now you get +1 advisor pool. So that's a large nerf to innovative. Because one of the good reasons why it was a good idea group to go for was you'd get reduced cost on things that would then make future things cost less, and therefore the overall cost of the idea group was lower. Don't know why it's in this section though. Polish magnate rebels added as a type, replacing the noble rebels in Poland with a resilient, tougher breed hell-bent on elective monarchy. So this just keeps elective monarchy in Poland more often. Particularist rebels can now happen even if you don't have economic ideas. I've never seen them before. I tend to not take economic ideas, but it's good to know. Patriot rebels can now once again defect provinces to subject nations. So I assume this is if you had a nation under you and there was rebels wanting to, like, in your provinces, wanting to give provinces to your subject nation, what would instead happen if it would give it to someone else. But now it'll just give it to the correct person. Subjects who have provinces defect to them now get large increase in their liberty desire. Okay, so if they're getting more land from you due to your rebels, they're definitely going to want to break free because they're stronger. Rebels revolt against the province owner rather than the province controller, but will still siege the controller. Rebels revolt against the province owner rather. Okay, so this is when you're in a when you've gone and conquered some land, but you haven't pieced out yet. This used to you get rebels in that land, but now it's going to be against the owner of the province, as in the person who still has it, because you haven't pieced out for it, rather than the person who currently controls it in a war. Which makes a difference because it will appear on their rebel screen, and when you piece out, will be there for them, not for you. I think that's what it's saying. Subjects. Revolution and aspiration for liberty disasters can no longer happen to subjects. Okay, presumably because subjects can't have people having a revolution for liberty because they don't have liberty because they're under you. Okay. Technology. Primitives is no longer based on religion, but rather all countries with a tech group penalty of 100% or slower are considered primitives. Okay, so this is the question I was asking earlier. This is how they define primitives. It's if your tech group has a penalty of 100% or lower. Primitive tech groups are no longer allowed to build ships. Try to think if there's any that I can think of where that would affect. Maybe Ryukyu has a problem with that? Maybe they're not primitives. This shouldn't be a huge problem. Although the random New World did tend to have a lot of water around it last time I tried it, so maybe that would cause issues there. Force March is no longer an effect gained through national ideas, but instead given from Admin Tech 9. Oh, okay, so this is the Force March from the offensive ideas. They've taken it away, given that +1 advisor pool, and then given everybody Force March at Admin Tech 9. That's very useful. And interesting they do that. Presumably that means that they're trying to get people not to take offensive, but they still like having Force March in the game. Trade. Reworked inland trade mechanics to have caravan power based on your base tax that is given in your home node if it is inland, or if in any node where you try to pull to or from inland, modified with your caravan power. This replaces previous inland and transfer towards inland modifiers. So what used to happen is you'd have you would be able to continually transfer inland, and then you get a huge trade power bonus as long as you weren't collecting in your home node. And now that's not the case. I don't entirely know how this new one works, but we will find out, no doubt. trade companies now have -2 missionary strength penalty to compensate for the fact that they ignore non-accepted culture missionary strength penalties. Non-accepted culture. Okay, so if you had a province as part of a trade company, you wouldn't get the negative for having a non-accepted culture, but that would mean that your missionary strength would be easier to come by, so they're just evening it out. Units. Pretenders no longer increase local autonomy when they win. Okay, that's very nice. No longer have automatic access to allies while at war if those allies are not part of the war themselves. Makes a bit of sense. If they're not in the war, then you shouldn't be able to just go and walk in their land. Although you should be able to just ask them for military access, generally. You now have automatic access to any countries that are granting military access to those you are at war with. So say you're at war with, you're in a war with, you're France, you're in a war with Austria, and you want to, and they have access through Savoy, you can now just walk through Savoy, opposed to having to ask Savoy yourself. It is no longer possible to send explorers to open seas before you have the quest for the New World idea. Okay, that kind of makes sense. You need the idea to do it. Your armies can now shatter retreat to any province controlled by anyone fighting in a war together with you. Okay, so this means that if you're fighting a distant war, your units won't necessarily go and walk all the way back to your land. They'll just walk to somewhere close by. War can now transfer occupation to countries whose subjects control adjacent provinces. Okay, so if you want to feed a vassal of one of your allies, you can do. Okay, so now we're on to AI changes. Autonomy can now raise and decrease autonomy. I didn't know that the AI couldn't. That's interesting. Diplomacy now has a penalty to allying countries that are allied to its rivals. So they will be harder to ally. So they will be less likely to want to ally people who are allied to the rivals. Makes sense. No longer has a penalty to allying multiple great powers. Okay. Yeah, I suppose that is a bit weird that they would have that. Because what used to happen is you'd be a great power and you try and ally somebody and they'd say, no, I don't want to ally because I'm already allied to these two other great powers. But it doesn't make sense that they wouldn't also ally to you. But the way they've changed it here is the penalty to allying countries that are allied to its rivals. So you'll be able to have a strong group as long as you're all allied, as long as you're all friends with each other. But if one of you rivals one of the other ones, then there'll be the negative penalty. Will now only join coalitions if there is a sufficiently large coalition in place or enough other countries interested in joining such a coalition that they would have a chance at challenging the coalition target. Basically, if you're a very large power, you're no longer just going to be coalitioned by, say, Ulm or something. It's you're just going to have to wait till there's a lot of people want to coalition you, which is nice. Less passive against countries that border through its vassals, so they'll try and get land for their vassals. Hard AI is now less willing to ally with countries it is neutral towards. Okay, so hard's harder. More reluctant to grant military access to those who are at war with their allies, so they'll try and help their allies more. It's good. No longer willing to give military access to stronger nations they dislike if they have a powerful overlord. So they're no longer going to be threatened by. So if they're say a vassal of France, they're no longer going to just let you walk through because they're threatened of you because they know that they have France behind them. So it's nice that they take that into consideration now. More priority on relative power when considering whether to grant military access. So basically they're going to be a little bit more picky about who they give military access to. And you're going to have to butter them up a little bit. HRE, Emperor is now less willing to peace out of wars where he's defending the Empire. So Emperor is a bit more of a defender now. Well, now wait a bit before starting the league war so the player has a chance to join, so that the leagues won't start and they'll be like, war! And the player will be like, how do I can't join in? It gives the player a chance to actually enjoy a bit of the game. Electors are now more likely to vote for the league leader when determining who should be emperor after a league war is won by the opposition religion. Okay, so if you win a league war, all the people in the league are going to probably vote for you. Ideas will now pick idea groups dynamically based on AI will do if AI uses historical idea groups to define is set to 0 or the game is using a custom or random setup. So I think the AI used to pick, usually picks historical idea groups, like they'll pick the same ones each time because it historically makes sense, but if you've randomized everything, they're not going to do that anymore, which is good. We'll no longer pick trade ideas unless it has 6 provinces or is a merchant republic. Okay, so sensible idea groups. Portugal now takes expansion before religious. So Portugal will probably colonize more. Chinese miners will no longer take expansion ideas. Expansion's got colonists in it, so it doesn't really make sense that they would take it. So, that's good. War. Now more reluctant to separate peace out of a war where their side is winning. So what would happen is you'd have this war where you'd take in over half a country, you'd have all your allies in it, you'd have your allies, you'd all be really enthusiastic for the war, and then the time in war negative to peacing out would go away, and all the AI would be like, okay, time to peace out. And they just peace out for white peace or something. And now they'll actually take into account, oh, we're winning the war, we might get something here. Which is good. Fixed a bug where AI would always treat a peace offering of others' trade power as something it wanted, despite the UI saying otherwise. So basically you could trick the AI into giving away trade power. So, here they took it away. Interface, alerts, unrest alert opens stability view instead of cycling provinces. Okay, I didn't know it did that, so something there. Launcher front end map starts in political mode when entering single player or multiplayer. That's the mode you most often use, so that's good, opposed to terrain, which you tend not to need for a lot of the game. Macro builder. So this is a few changes where they'll now show the unrest number instead of settling the net. Like basically what it would do is it would just say there's 0 unrest, so you wouldn't be able to know if you needed to lower unrest, like lower autonomy, because you wouldn't know how much like leeway you had. So to lower autonomy you need pretty much -10 unrest. Because when you lower autonomy, it will add 10 unrest. So you want to make sure that you're below 10. Anyway, that's what this is. MISC. Added warnings, reminders for army fleet maintenance lower than 100% to war declaration dialogue. So if you are declaring war, it will say your armies aren't at 100%, maybe you should do that. So it's good, it means that you're less human error there. It's now a message when a truce involving your country expires. Good, so you won't miss a truce timer. Battle sounds less loud, so you don't need to change all your volumes to make sure you don't get deafened by battle sounds. Tech map mode now also says the technology group of the owner of the province in the tooltip. Okay, well that's good. It's nice, it's just adding more information. Provinces fixes to allied objective selection pop up, easier to close without reselection. I didn't have any problems with it. National monuments are now visible in political map mode. I didn't know they were. Tooltip for personal union offer is now probably correct. I like that paradox. Just we're not sure if it's correct, but it's probably right. Okay. Tooltip explain monthly advisor cost, benefits for joining Crusade in Crusade target in papacy view. Province condensed tooltips will now give a province prefix at all lines. It is now shown how to stop a disaster and why it is or isn't progressing in disaster tooltip. Which is good, because it showed you there was a disaster happening. It still didn't say, you know, this is how you stop it. Tooltip now explains that you can't declare war on your senior Union partner while he fights in a war of succession for your throne. Toggle tooltip for allow allied armies to load fleet button. Integration, annexation, diplo point cost now shows up in the diplo point gain tooltip. So instead of it saying, oh, we're gaining 10 a month, and then you wouldn't get anywhere near that, it takes into account that you're also integrating and annexing. Consolidate regiments tooltip now displays information about the shift modifier. Rebel factions in Outliner now have a tooltip. So you'll be able to, I think that means that you're now able... Oh, right. No, now I have a tooltip. Never mind, talking rubbish. You now get a tooltip saying if ships can be upgraded or not, even at sea. Claims tooltips corrected with regards to expiration of owned uncored provinces. Privateer mission button tooltip correctly displays the current activity, just like the protect trade mission button. Okay. Units moved leader stars for navies to be consistent with armies. That's good. Consistency is very nice. Holding shift down when consolidating regiments now keeps the empty regiments around, so this means that you could consolidate your regiments but still have zero people in a regiment. So this might be useful if you want to consolidate your regiments, take away the damaged people, and then have a full strength group of people. But you still want your damaged people to reinforce, which is nice. Nicer privateer button alignment for certain DLC combinations. Friendly rebel units in battle on map now get the correct colour instead of the enemy. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down and see if there's anything after this. So I don't do user modding, so I don't know about that. Right, script. Buildings, royal palaces now gives less more legitimacy. Good if you're having trouble with legitimacy. Decisions, added decision to form the Polish nation. Didn't. Okay, so if Poland falls, you can build back up again. Ruthenia can now be formed even if Russia exists. Forming Manchu no longer changes you out of the Horde government tech. So if you want to keep Horde, you can when you form Manchu. But forming Queen now changes you out of Horde government tech. Okay. Restoring the Byzantine Empire now gives claims instead of cores. Okay, so what used to happen is you would get cores and everything, and now you just get claims, which aren't nearly as good, and it means that you have more admin cost. The Kale Canal is now cheaper than other canals and will trigger fewer bad events during construction, so this will mean it's more likely that you'll see this canal being built. Canals can now be built if the subject owns the provinces you need. You can start them earlier. Add a decision to form the League of Mayapan and change into the Maya tag. That's good. That's an interesting thing if you want to play as the Maya. Added a decision to form Australia. So if you have all of Australia, yes, you get that decision. Wonder what the conditions are for that. Like, do you just need the provinces, or do you need not to control other provinces? So it would be a thing like you have to break free from whatever colonial thing you've got, and then you can form Australia. Forming the Byzantine Empire now requires Briga and Esperos, so you need more things to form it. Okay, bunch of event changes. Don't know all the events off by heart, so it would be pointless to read through them. Ideas, don't know all of these ideas. There's a lot of new ideas. They have added a lot of ideas, so that's going to be pretty good. Change the names of some things, change some flags. Okay, so they changed some setups. I'm just going to scroll and see if there's anything new. Just a bunch of bug fixes, I think. Yep, that's it. Well, thank you for watching these patch notes, and hopefully I will see you in my new campaign for EU4 El Dorado. See you then. Goodbye.